All right, everybody, welcome. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are located. And welcome to today's Objective Strategic Session, or OSS. It is an opportunity for y'all to learn a little bit more about this assessment event for digital infrastructure that supports the Naval Postgraduate School Consortium for Advanced Manufacturing Research and Education, otherwise known as CAMRES, Expeditionary Advanced Manufacturing Network that they will be running out in Indo-PACOM for this upcoming RIMPAC exercise. It's an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the technical asks and specifications, as well as an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the programmatics and timelines on it. My name is Morgan Bauer. I am the Hub Director for FLEETWERX, and I will be facilitating today. So as far as agenda, first I'm going to give you a little bit of background on FLEETWERX, who we are, how we operate, what we do. Then some introduction to the government stakeholders on the call, both the NPS folks and some of their sponsors. Then they will present their problem statements and requirements, the things that they are looking for, which will follow with an opportunity for you guys to ask them questions. When you do ask those questions, I would ask that you please either raise your hand or put the question in the chat, and I will read it out, and I will do my best to raise those questions in the order in which they are submitted. Finally, we're going to close out by reviewing the timeline and the path forward for this opportunity. So starting off with an introduction about FLEETWERX, we are a DefenseWorks innovation hub. DefenseWorks is a 501c3 nonprofit located in Niceville, Florida, that has innovation hubs across the United States, including SoftWorks with SOCOM, HSWorks with Department of Homeland Security, the Doolittle Institute with the Air Force, and us, FLEETWERX, with the Naval Postgraduate School, located here in Monterey, California. We support the mission of the Naval Postgraduate School to provide graduate education to mid-career officers, and also in defense applied research, which is the capacity that we are operating in today. We are a neutral facilitator. What we try to do is make it easier for businesses to interact with NPS and the government, whether that is by spinning in innovative technologies that y'all have developed, or by spinning out and licensing patents, technologies, and IPs that Naval Postgraduate School researchers have developed. This is a funded opportunity, so there will be funding for those proposal or proposals that are selected today. They'll be receiving a grant type funding via a business to business agreement. With that, I will turn things over to the government stakeholders and their sponsors on this call to introduce themselves. We will start with the PI for this project, Chris Coran. If you could just hop on, give a brief intro, and then pass the baton.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon. My name is Chris Curran. I am the program manager for CAMRE, the Consortium for Advanced Manufacturing Research and Education. We were stood up a couple years ago with a function of accelerating metal AM adoption in the Tri-Service Maritime Force, so Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard. Over the years, we've pivoted just slightly through, not pivoted away from metal, but we still focus on metal a lot and advanced manufacturing, but our interest has expanded because one of the concerns we had is knowing the DoD's ability to spend lots of money on printers, let's just say, how are we making sure we're maximizing the viability of any idle printer in the DoD's infrastructure? What is the command and control system that helps us make the decisions we need to make to say, I can send a print to here, there, et cetera, et cetera. And then beyond that, it doesn't do a tremendous amount of good if you can produce a part, but you cannot figure out how to get that part from either a born in need of subtractive, let's say, or born in need of heat treat phase, to a fully developed part that can be delivered to the warfighter. And based on that, we started looking at how do we integrate with autonomous systems and look at the payload capacities, the size of the prints, looking at it from moving from A to B for post-processing and maybe from B to C to get to the warfighter. So as we looked at that, we started talking with OUSD Mantech about the ability to command and control that kind of complex advanced capabilities network, and which led us to a couple experimentations over the last year or two, and led us to the RIMPAC exercise in 2026, where we'll be looking to really fully validate our first official runs on this. We did some runs last year where we had capability that looked at the data sets, made AI suggestions about courses of action that could solve the warfighter's demand signal. And we want to take it to the next level in RIMPAC 2026. So Morgan, if that's good, I'm thinking I might want to go to Kyle next. Is that a safe assumption?
Yes, thank you, Chris, and thank you for kind of previewing the problem set as well. So over to you, Kyle.
Sure, I'll limit my discourse to just an introduction right now. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Cobb. I am the Deputy Chair for the Joint Additive Manufacturing Working Group, or JAMWIG, that is led out of OUSW R&E's Manufacturing Technology Office. Our mission is to convene and coordinate the mill services in order to operationalize additive manufacturing, and we came into existence in the 2017 timeframe. And as Chris Curran mentioned, we are one of the resource sponsors for this effort and the larger Joint Force experimentation efforts. Over to Elisa Peters.
Hi, Elise Peters. Some of you I know. Welcome to this session. Appreciate you being here. I'm the Joint Additive Manufacturing Working Group facilitator working for Kyle and his and our director, Keith DeRees. And I will say that one of the focuses this year will be because we are participating in a couple of exercises with Camry this summer on automating some workflows from a perspective of a logistics operations center or a maintenance operations center. And so, I mean, I won't get into deep detail, but it's following along with Chris Curran's description of some of the problem sets. Some of the things we do, including reverse engineering and, and then at the other end, quality assurance checks, we feel could be sped up and more accurately done by some software tools, automation, that kind of thing. So I'll pass it on to anyone else. Who's next, Morgan?
Let's go with Sarah. Let's kind of close out on the sponsor side with Sarah, and then over to Kate after that.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Topper. I'm a JAMWIG facilitator. I work with Elisa and Kyle, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Over to Kate.
Yeah, I'm Kate DeLille, and I'm the newest member of the JAMWIG facilitation team. So I'm interested to hear what we're doing today.
Thank you, Kate. And then I see we also have Kevin on the call. So Kevin, could you give a brief intro?
Yeah, I'm Kevin Mesa. I'm just one of the field engineers. I'll be using software out there for the field and helping with organization of the parts and going on out there in the exercise.
Yeah, Kevin's going to be very much an end user for the product. So his feedback and his advice is very important to us. All right, last but not least, Michael Radigan.
Hey, hello, everybody. Michael Radigan. For the last several years, been supporting the Camry team and the FLEETWERX team for operationalizing advanced manufacturing. And I think Chris did a really good job framing the problem. But what I'll add is, when we conduct these operational exercises, we may get hundreds and hundreds of part requests that come in. And so we're trying to find tools that help a commander or decision maker speed up their cycle and rack and stack priorities more quickly, decide what needs to be worked on, and some automated workflows for pushing out to where the work would actually be done. So these digital tools will absolutely be key when you're in the heat of battle and you're trying to field hundreds of these requests. How do you do it more quickly and make smarter decisions? Thanks.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you to the government team for those introductions. And thank you all for your interest in learning a little bit more about this mission set and this problem statement, and being willing to potentially submit to help solve that problem. I'm going to pop up a set of slides over here that kind of gives a broad overview of different things that we are looking into. And this is a quite broad topic because we are looking for digital infrastructure tools that support the government, both Camry and their sponsors' vision of a networked joint advanced manufacturing system that is distributed over a huge amount of space and time. So the bullet points in this slide are a very small summary of all the different possibilities. But from my conversations with both the Camry team and the sponsors, I'll say that it's largely about finding ways to automate those processes, especially around part intake request and TDP intake and request, because you have a lot of end users with things that are broken that want their things fixed, but maybe don't have a great way to communicate that currently other than email or SneakerNet. With that, I will open it back up to Chris or Lisa if you guys want to give any further overview or maybe a little bit more insight besides the things that you both discussed before and the things that are on this slide. Any additional color or information, and then after you're done with that, we can dive straight into questions.
So I think it might be helpful for them to understand that when you say a large large area in the RIMPAC, we're talking about thousands of miles. We are effectively exercising nodes from Korea and Japan back easterly direction to Hawaii, California, other parts of the continental US. And so, but this Joint Advanced Manufacturing Command Center is in Hawaii, right? So we're trying to enable that we are utilizing production capacity at the closest to the point of need. If that makes sense, that probably helps kind of frame how what we're talking about here, and the fact that there's different manufacturing nodes in different places, and the command cell has to make that decision as to who can get it to the place it's needed fastest. And right now it's quite manual, and so that's where we've been talking. That's what we're kind of talking about as far as that decision that's happening in the cell. And I will say Kevin DeMesa, he's got a much more detailed view of that because he worked through it with us on Trident Warrior 25 and the things that go into that. So maybe Kevin, you can give him a little bit more.
Yeah, so it was for the systems that we originally were using, just from like hundreds of requests from different units from the Joint Force immensely, was having to basically decipher what was the parts coming in. Then once you get the request, going into the request tracker and actually moving everything into, once we have the part, do we have all the data required for it? Do we need any preliminary data? And do we need to go out to the field to collect that data as well? Once we're able to go there, everything was done through just pure manpower, through either Marines, sailors, soldiers, and other engineers in the workforce that we're able to utilize. The problem that we have is I wouldn't say problem, more of like an obstacle, is just you couldn't be able to do different parallel flows. You got to work one at a time if you're able to, and have to work with others. There's just a lot of bottlenecks going on during this request. But what we worked with, we were able to go through with what we had. It's just able to streamline processes that would help out immensely if we're able to connect with the outside forces, not internal to our own central command, but outside too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. I was sitting beside Kevin for a large portion of that, and it's a lot of copying and pasting and not a lot of prioritization and automation. To steal a phrase that Michael likes to use, we want to be basically the Amazon for military parts production Please mute yourselves if you're not muted right now. Thank you very much. Okay. As I was saying, we want to be Amazon for the Indo. All right, Kate. There we go. We want to be the Amazon for the Indo-Pacific. And we would love for y'all to be the ones who help us automate a lot of our processes and take it away from manual emails. With that, I'm going to open up the floor to all of the participants for this meeting. If you have any questions that are technical in nature, the government team or the sponsors will answer those. Anything that is more programmatic and timeline oriented, I can answer that. And I will just reiterate, please, if you have a question, either raise your hand and I will call on you, or pop the question in the chat and I will read it out for you. With that, I will be quiet and open the floor for questions.
Go ahead, Stanislav.
Yeah. And one more thing before you go, Stanislav, sorry. I forgot to mention, please just give a overview of who you work for, just a brief, I am this person from this organization. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, okay, thank you. So Stanislav, I'm an engineering director working in Field Note, Norway. We specialize on digital inventory solutions and battle damage repair solutions as well. The one question that I have, if solutions that you are looking for, you told about managing capabilities and how, like, managing logistics for them to know where, which units, which capabilities, which kind of printer do you have. Another question that I know from working with other nations, if you are also interested in knowing what types of engineers you have on those locations that can use those capabilities, because that's a problem that we know from what's going on here in Eastern Europe right now. So printers and delivery of the printers is not, there is a lot of possibility for that, but getting them and use them and having and to know that you have certified people, that's an even bigger problem. If you're interested in those solutions as well, or you think that you have a good overview of engineers and capabilities of your engineers who can operate those printers.
Thank you, Stanislav. I would maybe say we'll do a two-part answer to this question. Maybe Michael could say where we are and what we've done in the past, and then Elisa could maybe articulate a little bit about where we want to go in the future.
Yeah, so where we've been in the past on the digital side of the house is we've kind of built our own bespoke system on the SharePoint platform. So think Power BI, Power Automate. We originally had it on one of the military enterprise networks. We moved it over to the .edu domain. It gave us a little bit more of joint access, but that's one of the biggest problems. We need to have joint accessibility with this system that any service can log in and participate with role and authority-based permissions. And then we also need to be able to integrate with commercial partners. So they need to be able to interact with the system in certain ways. But the overall system itself allowed us to process the intake. So we had a very simple QR code that allowed people to scan and raise their hand and fill out a quick form that says, I need help. And this might be to replace a part, or they might have an idea for a new capability. That came in, it allowed us to track all the research work that's required in order to understand the drawings, build the models, select the right materials, figure out what the manufacturing recipe is going to be. Then we had to assign it. So we may have a 3D printer at one location, and then we do some subtractive work on it at another location. We might have to heat treat it at a third location, and then put a coating on it at another location. So we need to be able to track the logistics all the way through. You know, that Domino's pizza model. I want to see where every step of my pizza is. Same kind of thing. So we have to track it. And then we wanted to automate the good news and the results that we did. So we wanted to be able to take all the data that we had on the front end and then display it in a nice way. Well, here's the project we worked on. Here were the results that we had. And one of the missing things that we had in this whole equation, though, was integrations with the existing supply systems. So in some ways, we're tracking our own work, but the supply system has to track similar work inside of there. And so there was this disparate connection there, and you're creating double work, more or less. So we want to do that better in the future. So those are a couple of highlights of the things, and I'll turn it over to Red for her thoughts on it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Appreciate you describing the former system we were using. So you could hear from some of the description that he gave is that we need, you know, users to be able to say, hey, I need help, right? So requesting someone support them with some manufacturing, and then what we saw is that becomes quite a cumbersome process to go look up data, find data, and triage it properly. In the past, we were unable to do any time-based decisions on who gets to produce the item based on proximity to the need. That's an area where we see could be improved. The other thing is, as Kevin said, everything is serial. So you get that intake request and you only have one person who's able to interrogate the request and figure out where that goes. And so as we've said, we sort of need a little bit more automation of the process to be able to stop bottlenecking and constraining how much output, because we're taking extra time to find digital files and figure out who can then produce the part, and then, you know, is serial production versus it being some things can happen in parallel behind the scenes that we're not actually having to manually do ourselves, if that makes a little bit of sense there. And then, you know, and then that's where we see, I think, good benefit that we could have from something that's more automated. Chris, you have your hand up. Did you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, you know, I think Stanislav made a very interesting point, and it's something we'd love to get to, you know, kind of our talent management too, right? Michael probably bounced around it a little bit. One of the list is talent, you know, who's doing what where, but we didn't mature that as much as we could. You know, we had a gentleman, we'll just say we had a Jacob, who was an older gentleman, could knock things out really easily. And then we had some younger engineers who probably didn't have the same talent and capability, but we did not have Fitbit trackers on them, tying them to machines to know exactly how all that worked. So the talent management is just as important, but we had rudimentary at best with that one. So I just wanted to make sure we did track talent, but not probably at the depth that we would like to someday in the near future. That's all I wanted to add. Thanks, Red.
Yeah, and that's important to have support there, even from the system. You know, the system could ask, okay, you want to put it here, but is the person capable of that? You know, so maybe knowing what's at the sites to be able to produce the item is something that could be supported by the automations.
Yeah, and
can
just
I jump in as well?
Yes, Kate, go ahead.
Just real quick, and then of course going forward, we're going to need the ability to feed this into higher, like to the actual operational center that whichever military service or operation is running. Because having run logistics operation centers, there is a point where some of this information is absolutely vital to letting the commander know what their operational picture is.
Yes. Yep. So for example, we'll just say we have a tank. I'm not going to name a name. We have a tank that is down, and commander wants to know when it's going to be fixed and back up in operation so they can employ it to fight the battle. So just as a generic type of reporting that she's referring to.
Or the pony motor on a P-19.
Okay, thank you guys. Just for maybe a tiny bit of additional context on there. So the system that Michael and his team kind of built out has a lot of extremely detailed information on what the printers are, what the post processors are, what capabilities are where, you know, down to the serial number, build volume, all of that good stuff. But it is entered in manually on a very long Excel spreadsheet that you then upload onto SharePoint. So there is that tracking of people, and there is that tracking of equipment that is across both military and government and private industry nodes, but it is not something that is in a true database format where it's being consistently updated, tracked. That information feeds into that overall command and control picture that the commander can then use to make actionable decisions on it. There's a lot of data, but it's not tied and updated well together. Stanislav, if you're continuing in on your current question, then I'll go back to you before I get to the 2 questions from BB in the chat.
Yeah, you can go to other questions and then return to me. That's fine.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. 2 questions from BB. First one, where will the parts requests come from? Will they include information like design requirements or a CAD file? This is a great question for Kevin DeMesa to talk about what he experienced last year.
Yeah, so the request would be broad. It could just be a broken piece. It could just be like a nut and bolt, or it could be a full TDP CAD file submission where they give a CAD file or just a drawing of some sort. It's very broad, so essentially it's whatever information we could collect initially, and then the steps from there varies on what information we're given.
Yeah, it's anything from my door doesn't work to here is a piece that I want produced. Here is all the design information. Here's the full CAD. Just print it out and give it to me and we're good to go. So huge variety. Go ahead, Elisa.
Yes, but there was other information required on our intake form, you know, so that it would be potentially that information existed, but just in a services like repository, we'll say. So that's why he said, you know, it could be they just say, hey, I need this, and they already knew that part exists as a part with a TDP, for example.
And to even build up on that, we always go on the assumption that there is no CAD or design requirements given, just for if there's any engineering requirements or any redesign requirements needed as well. So we go in blind, expecting blind, but if we get additional data, it always supports it.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's always a fine line walking between, we don't want to make the intake process so difficult that if a soldier, sailor, or Marine has something broken and they don't have all the information and they're in a high stress environment, they don't necessarily need to be looking up all of that information, securing the TDP. But we also want to make sure that the government team is getting enough information to be able to execute on it. So it's a balance that they're trying to walk there, which any solution that is provided here will also have to navigate that kind of balance between access and quality. The second question is one that I can answer a little bit, and then I'll let the government team build upon my answer if they have any additional color they want to provide. Additional context on the manufacturing nodes. Are they US military operated, supplier operated? What types of modalities? Are there any existing manufacturing control systems to integrate to? Somewhat facetiously, the answer to that is yes. All of the above, basically. There's government facilities, there's foreign military facilities, there's foreign industry facilities, there's US industry facilities. There's printers that are in colleges. Some of those are tied together with anything going from a industry vendor that has a really comprehensive contract manufacturing workflow where they've built that all out, to it's, you know, something sitting in a professor's lab somewhere where he needs you to give him a phone call or send him a fax with the information, basically. So not to be too tongue-in-cheek, but it is a massive variety, because the overall concept of this project is how do we tie together all of these disparate advanced manufacturing capabilities and leverage those for the benefit of the military if they are in a near peer combat scenario that is starting in the near future. With that, oh, Kate, oh no, Kyle. Kyle has something to add on there. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yep. Thanks, Morgan. You know, like you said, facetiously, the answer is yes to all of the above. This is going to require effort from the joint and coalition forces, our allied nations and partners, folks across the organic and defense industrial base. There is an advanced manufacturing repair ICD that is controlled and cannot be shared with the public. However, there is a diagram that contains all 4 echelons of capability that we did go through the public release process. And I think that would be something that we could send to you, Morgan, to distribute to this community, because it provides a really good overview in an operational graphic to help kind of level set the group.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Kyle.
Yep. And just to, you know, yep, no problem. And then the second question regarding existing manufacturing control or execution systems, the answer to that is yes to all the above as well. But you have to realize when you're dealing with sensitive information, especially within the government, most of this equipment has not been hardened from a cybersecurity perspective. So a lot of it remains air-gapped. That is certainly not our desired end state. And there are systems that are coming online, but they're taking very large efforts to get authorities to operate on the existing DoD information network enterprises. So they will certainly be there in the future, but right now the gear is disparate and disconnected for the most part.
Yeah. Thank you, Kyle. I'll flag something that Elisa said in the chat before going over to Chris. The digital manufacturing exchange is going to be the ultimate overall backbone of this effort to tie everything together. And ultimately, we want solutions that are going to be able to cooperate and API in and out of that kind of system. But, you know, we are still in early innings of setting everything up. So there's a lot of we're trying to figure out this whole connected, distributed, advanced manufacturing process. So it's we're in the testing solutions phase right now. Over to Chris.
Yeah, 10 seconds. I also wanted to point out that our printers are not IoT'd into everything either. So there's a lot to know that a printer is available means that skilled operator has to put in, I am doing nothing right now, because the machines aren't telling the organization they're doing nothing yet. So I just want to add that other complexity.
Yeah, so it's not a simple problem to solve. I'll just say that. Question from Gabriel in the chat from Building Block Systems. Who is doing the DFAM work? Probably a question for Kyle or Elisa or Sarah.
So going back to what Kevin said earlier, we get requests in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes they come from an engineer or one of our fleet operators that has access to a CAD tool and it has created a prototype already. But other times we get, a napkin sketch. So I'll say that it depends based on the level of geometric maturity that we receive on the request. We do rely heavily upon the subject matter experts that are located within the depots, arsenals, shipyards, as well as warfare centers to provide some of that guidance. But I think there's a future state that we would want that reverse engineering and CAD capability at the point of need, especially in a contested logistics environment.
Yep, and that's one of the areas that we are interested in, looking for capabilities that can automate as much of that as possible, because that is an area where there are not a ton of personnel who are working on it, and they are stretched pretty thin. So if you have a solution in that category, that is definitely of interest. Okay, question. Kyle, is your hand still up or is it newly up?
Sorry, that was a residual.
Okay, no worries. Stanislav, go ahead.
One question about capabilities. Do you consider also connecting mobile capabilities? Mobile factories that can be attached to the track or other car and can basically move thousands of kilometers.
Yeah. Expeditionary systems are well within scope.
Okay, thank you guys. And then another question from Ben from Building Block. Is there also an interest in a system to provide part-specific operator guidance, such as digital work instructions and SOPs? Put that out to anyone from the government side.
I'll say we are looking at those options, and it obviously could be nested within this or other offerings. Is that a safe statement, Morgan?
Yeah, there is another OSS for a kind of similar topic that's a little more focused on AI and machine learning capabilities. So that one, I believe, is next Friday. So that kind of capability would be of interest either here or in that assessment. So either one could work.
Yeah, I agree with you, Morgan.
Yeah, I'll foot stop this and quickly get on a MIL standard 31,000 pedestal, which is the parent document for all technical data packages. If there is something that requires a critical manufacturing process, meaning that if you do not follow this process exactly, you will not get the part that is intended, we would certainly want that information and include it with the part's technical data package to ensure that we're getting what we expect on the other side. So in short, yes.
Right. Thank you all. Any other questions? I do not see anything else in the chat or any other hand raised at the moment.
Yeah. Hey, Morgan, I have one. Glenn Rosen here. It wasn't explicitly asked for in the requirements, but I'm curious if there might be interest in like a capability for, I'll call it technical data as a service. It was a big topic at the Defense Maintenance Symposium last week in Phoenix, and like an ability to send lines of code for print jobs, but share not share the IP, because the if you will, like segments of code are not the TDP for the whole part. There's just in pieces, kind of like maybe like a Netflix streaming, where you can rent a movie, but you can't keep the movie, the IP, copyright, whatever. Would that sort of capability be interesting to the government?
I believe Elisa put in the chat, they're definitely looking at that on their DMX system that they're using. And then I think Michael has his hand raised as well.
The answer, I think, is yes. We've looked at a variety of systems over the last several years for streaming in data for the reasons that you mentioned, or if you are using OEM IP, it's almost like a tokenized version. You can use it one time to print the thing that you need. So that's certainly of interest, helps protect everybody.
Okay,
Kyle,
but it sounds like you already have a solution. Is that right?
We have a solution that's under development called DMX. However, I don't think that precludes us from looking at things that can maybe aid that. Or I think that this goes to the reverse engineering and design for additive stuff. If you're talking about offering design of tech data as a service, if you're going back to that conversation, I think that's still in play, as reverse engineering is listed here.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Kyle?
Yeah, just sort of foot-stomping what we just discussed. The impetus for the creation of the Digital Manufacturing Exchange, or DMX, was to enable the sharing of IP from an OEM to the government to enable the reconstitution of our forces. And really, that's because we are concerned about the threat vectors associated with streaming data, such as confidentiality, availability, and integrity of that data. So that's a platform in which you can share the data. But if you would like to propose the enablement of a technical data as a service, I think that is well within scope.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Have two
Okay,
other
thanks.
questions. One from Building Block Systems. Does DMX have an existing user interface, or would the solution be expected to provide its own user interface that would integrate to DMX? I'll leave that over to Elisa and Kyle and the team.
So DMX has, go ahead, Kyle, if you want to answer.
I think you're probably going to have the better answer. DMX has certainly defined the user interface, but I believe it's been on sort of a supplier by supplier basis. So I don't know what it would take to carve out a new interface. But we certainly know the folks that are the stewards of that system and will be participating in the upcoming Joint Force experiments. So over to you, Elisa. You might have a better answer.
So yes, DMX has its own user interface. Depending on what your solution is proposing, there's potentially a way for there to be connectedness. If it's doing, as we said in the former discussion, it's doing all the preparatory work for the tech data. It may be it's only necessary to provide a connection to pass the data to DMX, if that makes any sense. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right, good.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Stanislav, question.
Yeah, last question for today. There was a lot of focus on digital inventory and capability management, manufacturing capability management. What about battle damage repair, like knowledge base that people at the front line can use as a knowledge base itself, not necessarily how to produce something with additive manufacturing, but how to actually just fix something and get it back to operational. Is it also of interest for you as part of this exercise, or it's more on advanced manufacturing side and spare part production?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe Chris and or Michael, if you guys want to weigh in on there.
Yeah, I'll weigh in a little bit. I think that one's a good choice for the AI ML as well. I mean, obviously it plays a role in here as well. I know there have been discussions and meetings I've been on how, everybody wants a replicator at the forward edge that does exactly what it's supposed to do, and you just have to hit a button. But to your point, there are some AI tools that could certainly help pull thousands of shade tree mechanics knowledge base together to help solve a problem through AI and ML. I'm not saying it wouldn't work, baked into this offering either, but it might be better or more clearly defined in future offerings is what I would say. Morgan, how's that sound?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an area where the government team is interested in. I don't think from my couple years of experience with these exercises, I don't think it's something that's been really established and explored that much so far, but I think it is a topic area of future interest, I will say. And, if you had a capability around there, we would love to get the white paper for it just so that we could have it. And even if it's not selected for this, it could maybe inform some future decisions that are made.
Yeah, we do have it for operational level, strategic and a tactical level. It's more as digital inventory and manufacturing capabilities, but goes to frontline is basically knowledge base based with AI solutions.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Yep,
Thank you, sir.
I agree with Morgan and Chris. I think that's a fine topic for the other call.
Mm-hmm. Then a question from Bryce on, is SharePoint going to remain integrated? I will answer this with kind of caveats on caveats. Ideally, everything will be starting to shift over to our backbone on DME. That being said, I'm a very paranoid person, so I think I'm not gonna tell Chris and Michael that they can completely delete all of their SharePoint data and just move over completely. So I think we want to continue transitioning over to DME as much as possible, but we want to retain our capabilities in SharePoint just in case. And then I'll let Michael and Elisa maybe talk a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I would not worry too much about maintaining much on the SharePoint side of the house as far as this conversation is concerned. Anything that gets maintained SharePoint wise will be handled internally, but we're looking for the next generation system for this.
Agreed.
All right. Then a question from Stanislav on the next one. I will just pop in the chat the upcoming AI OSS. So that is the announcement, and then should have everything to link to it. With the disclaimer that the time may shift a little bit. It's middle AM that week, so there's a lot of moving pieces. So I would say sign up, but be aware it might shift a little bit probably to the right. Any other questions or comments? I've got 10 minutes left on my tracking, which I will probably need the last 3 to 5 for some programmatic stuff. So we have time for another 2 or 3 questions if folks have any. Okay, I'm not. Oh, we do have another question from the Building Blocks team. Can we connect with program staff for more questions between now and February 27th? Yes, that is one thing that we really try to provide. It's an area where we've gotten a lot of feedback from industry that the speed and responsiveness and quality of response for a lot of opportunities is something that is open to being improved. So we try to facilitate as many questions, answers, additional information as possible up to that point. Not everything can be shared, but if you send an email to info@fleetwerx.org, I will also pop that in the chat. We will answer it ourselves if it's a programmatic schedule kind of question, or try and get an answer from the government team if it's more on the technical side. But we try and keep our digital door always open, shall we say, and try and get you as much information and as much feedback as possible, because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you have a more informed and a better proposal and white paper that comes in, that's a win for the government, that's a win for you, that's a win for everybody. So we are here to answer as much and as many questions as we can. Any other questions or comments? What is the submission format? Thank you, Chris. That is going to be in a 3-page white paper. The template is available for download on the website. Just sent over the link to that page right there. That page also includes some timeline information, as well as a link to submit the white paper for it. So we try and make these submissions something that is fairly simple and easy. I was just in a panel discussion yesterday where one of the industry folks was talking about they burned an entire year of runway on one opportunity for another government event. This is not that kind of thing. It is a 3-page white paper, short, sweet, simple. And we hope to give you some good feedback on it after as well. Okay, 2 more questions. First from Gabe in the chat. Any info on the split between plastics and metal needs, volume and part classification? I mean, it's not a very satisfactory answer, but it does kind of depend on what comes in. I would say there's more interest in metal generally, especially from the NPS and Camry side, because they're a little more Navy and ship focused, but there are a lot of plastic requests that come in, especially those more high performance polymers, such as Ultem and Taro, those kind of things. I wonder if maybe, Kevin, you can give a little bit more kind of general overview on any trends that you saw last year.
General trend is there's actually a lot on both ends. It depends on the requirements for what we're repairing or what we're designing. And based off the design needs, sometimes it's just a metal solution for over-engineered, so we turn it into plastic too. So the answer is probably like 75 metal, 25 polymer, and that's because polymer, we already have a good database, a good knowledge set of what needs and what technology is already out there that's proven. Metal is 75 because there's more research involved with what's required, what can we utilize, and what is accepted. For part classifications, it really depends on what we're repairing.
Yeah, it's I guess, a little bit more closer to the real world than just a pure demo. So a large volume of those part requests come from people who are out in the exercise and have a piece of equipment that's broken and they want it fixed. So the answer kind of depends on what they need, what the warfighter actually needs during the exercise. Okay, I got a hand raised from Chris Barton, and then we may have to conclude with the questions because we are running up on time. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Morgan. Chris Barton from Drafter. One just question on the real-time visualization dashboard. Is that going to be a single node? Obviously, the manufacturing nodes are disparate, but are we kind of just thinking that this is going to be a single node of management, or do we need to plan for multi-organization management through a single system?
Great question, Chris. Maybe Michael or Chris Cran for the answer on that one.
I would say for the extent of what we're doing in RIMPAC, we will have a joint advanced manufacturing cell located as in a forward or a main kind of concept. The forward will be going ahead of us in June, where we would probably want to dress rehearse everything and make sure the connectivity works. But I would say that dashboard will be used by one joint advanced manufacturing cell for this iteration. So based on the fact that this is a very small offering, I would focus your energy towards one right now, unless Red has something to add. Go ahead, Red.
I just wanted to agree, and I think eventually you would want some sort of a dashboard at each location to then connect into the larger visual dashboard, and especially because we have so many levels of command. So you're going to have folks at nodes that are going to want to see it. So they have the visibility into where their urgent needs are. So good question.
Sure.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Unfortunately, I have a commitment coming up, so I will have to end us on time, so there's not any time for any additional questions. However, as I mentioned, please email info@fleetwerx.org with any further questions that you may have. Programmatic, we will answer. Technical, we'll go to the government team for their answer. Reminder that the white paper template is on the website at the link that I put in. That is due on the 27th of February at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So still some time left to work on that before you submit. And just a disclaimer while we are talking about the submissions, there is funding for this project. It is not a massive amount of funding, shall we say. So if you're thinking I'm going to go into a 1 to 3 year development cycle that is going to be paid for by this project and come out the door with a huge a exquisite digital system that is funded through this effort, that is probably not in the cards resource wise or time wise. This is kind of a quick trying to put something together, a minimum viable product, prototype, or commercially available tools that we can incorporate in with what are already being done. Yeah, a tech sprint, Kyle. Exactly. So just make sure that you are scoping your proposals and what you're going for appropriately based on that information. And another note, we are at FLEETWERX a neutral facilitator. I am not going to review or grade your submissions at all. That is going to be purely a government function. So that's one of the reasons why I can be so responsive to your questions that you send to info@fleetwerx.org. And we are happy to talk to you about any questions or comments that you may have. If you want to team up with another organization from this call, you can submit a joint white paper where you each have 3 pages. So if 2 companies, then full 6 pages. And if you want to team up with an organization that was not on this call, you can also do that. There's one little piece of paperwork. It's like one line on an Excel document you'll need to fill out. So just email info@fleetwerx.org and I will get that over to you. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance. I need to drop off for my next meeting, and I am looking forward to seeing your submissions. Thank you all.